Montana Territory, 1873. The town of Riverstone sat nestled between rolling prairie and distant mountains, a place where whispers traveled faster than the wind. The first frost of autumn had touched the landscape, painting it in hues of amber and gold, but the true coldness came from the hearts of those who called this frontier outpost home. Ezra Blackett knew horses better than he knew people, and that was exactly how he preferred it. At 25, he had already earned a reputation as the finest horse wrangler in 3 counties, a skill that kept him employed but also kept him moving. The lean, sun-kissed cowboy adjusted his worn Stetson as he led a magnificent chestnut mare down Riverstone's main street, his strong hands gentle on the lead rope. "No sense putting down roots when the next job is always calling," he muttered to the horse, who flicked an ear in his direction. This belief had served him well through 7 years of drifting. Every town eventually revealed its ugliness, its judgment. Better to keep moving than to be found wanting. His green eyes narrowed as townsfolk gave him appreciative nods, not for him, he knew, but for the fine horse he delivered to the livery. Ezra had learned young that people were fickle with their acceptance. His father had been respected until drought took their farm, then shunned when debt took his pride. The lesson had burned itself into Ezra's soul. Respect was temporary, but disappointment was forever. What Ezra wanted was simple enough: honest work, fair pay, and the freedom to leave before attachment formed. What he needed, though buried so deep he couldn't name it, was something far more dangerous to a drifter. Belonging, the livery owner, Harold Jenkins, emerged from the shadowy barn, wiping grease-stained hands on a rag. "Fine animal, Blackett," broke her gentle, "did you?" "Gentle but spirited," Ezra replied, patting the mare's gleaming neck. "She'll serve Mr. Thornton well. Thornton's expecting her tomorrow. You staying in town tonight?" Ezra nodded. "Just the night. Moving on to the Patterson spread tomorrow." Harold's bushy eyebrows rose. "Patterson, eh? Guess you ain't heard the gossip then." "Not interested in gossip," Ezra replied flatly, turning to unsaddle his own gelding. "Might interest you this time. That Patterson girl came back. The one they ran out 5 years ago." Harold leaned closer. "Town's in an uproar about it." Despite himself, Ezra's curiosity piqued. "What'd she do to get run out?" "Ask around if you're curious." "I got work to do," Harold said, taking the mare's lead. "The Widow Fisher's boarding house has room if you need a bed." Ezra finished settling his gelding, collected his saddlebags, and headed toward the modest hotel at the edge of town. The autumn air carried a promise of winter, and for the first time in months, the thought of another season of drifting felt heavier than usual. He hadn't made it halfway down the street when commotion erupted from the general store. A young woman exited, her arms full of packages, followed by the store owner's booming voice. "We don't need your kind here again, Katherine Patterson. Your money might spend, but your reputation don't wash clean." Ezra froze, watching as the woman stood tall despite the public humiliation. She was striking 22 at most, with hair the color of wheat fields in summer sunshine, pulled back in a simple bun. Her blue dress was plain but well kept, and though her cheeks flamed with color, her chin remained high. "My father's money spends just fine, Mr. Calhoun," she replied, her voice steady, "and I have as much right to shop here as anyone. Your father should have sent you east permanent instead of letting you skulk back." The woman, Katherine, gathered her dignity around her like armor and turned away, only to collide with a group of young men who had gathered to watch the spectacle. One deliberately stepped into her path, causing her to stumble and drop her packages. Ezra didn't remember deciding to move. He simply found himself standing between Katherine and the smirking men, his stance wide and shoulders squared. "The lady's trying to pass," he said quietly, the kind of quiet that carried danger. The ringleader, a broad-shouldered man with mean eyes, looked Ezra up and down. "You're new, don't know what she is." "Don't need to know. Just need you to step aside." Something in Ezra's eyes, perhaps the promise of violence so carefully controlled, made the man reconsider. He backed away with a forced laugh. "She ain't worth fighting over, stranger." Ezra knelt to help gather the scattered packages, aware of Katherine Patterson's wary gaze on him. "Thank you," she said softly, "but your chivalry might cost you. Association with me isn't beneficial in Riverstone." Up close her eyes were the deep blue of mountain lakes, rimmed with thick lashes and a wariness that spoke of old wounds. She couldn't have been more than 22, yet those eyes held the weight of someone who had seen the darker side of human nature. "Ezra Blackett," he said, handing her the last package, "and I'm just passing through, no association to worry about." Her smile was brief but genuine. "Katherine Patterson. Kate to the few who still speak to me." She studied him for a moment. "You're the horse wrangler they hired for the Thornton mare." He nodded, surprised. "Word travels fast here," she explained. "Especially when it's someone new who might not have heard about the town pariah yet." And why would a young woman be the town pariah? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Kate's expression shuddered. "That's a long story, Mr. Blackett, and not one for the middle of the street." She adjusted her packages. "Thank you again for your kindness. It's been some time since I've encountered that in Riverstone." As she walked away, her back straight and her steps measured, Ezra felt something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine curiosity about another person. It was a dangerous feeling for a man who prided himself on passing through towns without entanglement. "The Patterson girl's nothing but trouble," came a voice beside him. Ezra turned to find an older woman watching Kate's retreating figure with narrowed eyes. 5 years gone, and she still brings shame to her family name. "What exactly did she do?" Ezra asked, unable to reconcile the composed young woman with whatever scandal had turned an entire town against her. The woman seemed eager to share. "Took up with a married man when she was barely 17. Wendell Thompson, respectable businessman with a wife and 3 children, nearly destroyed his family before her father shipped her off to relatives back east." She lowered her voice to a conspirator's whisper. "Some say there was a baby, but no one knows for certain." Ezra touched the brim of his hat and moved on, uncomfortable with the woman's eager gossip. He'd seen enough frontier justice to know how quickly a community could turn on one of its own, especially a young woman. Truth often had little to do with it. He secured a room at the boarding house and spent the evening at the saloon, where whispers about Katherine Patterson continued to circulate. The story grew more salacious with each telling, but beneath the embellishments lay consistent elements. A very young girl, an older married man, and a town that had decided which one deserved their scorn. "Patterson Place is 2 miles north of town," the barkeep mentioned when Ezra inquired about his next job. "Good land, good horses. Old man Patterson's a fair employer, keeps to himself these days. Been that way since the scandal." Morning came with frost painting the window panes of Ezra's small room. He saddled his gelding and rode north, following the winding road toward the Patterson ranch. The property announced itself with well-maintained fences and fat cattle grazing in the distance. When he crested a small rise, the ranch house came into view, a substantial 2-story building with a wide porch and smoke curling from its chimney. As he approached, he spotted Katherine in the barnyard, dressed in practical riding clothes, her golden hair braided down her back. She was leading a spirited black colt in a circle, murmuring encouragement as the young horse pranced nervously. Ezra reined in his gelding, watching her technique with professional interest. Her hands were confident, her voice steady. The colt suddenly reared, yanking the lead rope. Katherine didn't panic or release her grip. Instead, she maintained pressure until the horse settled, then rewarded him with a gentle stroke. "Nice recovery," Ezra called, approaching slowly to avoid startling the horses. Katherine turned, surprise flickering across her features before recognition set in. "Mr. Blackett, I didn't realize you were the wrangler my father hired." "Neither did I until this morning," he admitted, dismounting. "You handle that colt well." "Midnight here is my project," she said, patting the young horse's glossy neck. "Father gave him to me when I returned, something to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied." A shadow crossed her face. "And a reason to stay away from town." Ezra nodded toward the colt. "He's got good conformation, spirited though." "Like recognizes like, I suppose." For a brief moment humor lit her blue eyes. "Father's in the main house." "I'll take you to him." As they walked, leading their horses, Ezra found himself studying her profile. In the morning light, he noticed the fine bone structure of her face, the determined set of her jaw. "You came back," he said suddenly. "Not many would after." "After being run out of town," she finished when he faltered. "This is my home, Mr. Blackett. My mother is buried on that hill." She nodded toward a small rise with a single oak tree. "I wasn't going to let the judgments of others keep me away forever." "That takes courage." She glanced at him as if assessing whether he was mocking her, or foolishness. "The jury's still out on which." James Patterson proved to be a taciturn man in his 50s, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent a lifetime under Montana skies. He explained the job curtly, breaking 6 young horses for riding and training 4 others for harness work. 2 weeks' work, maybe 3, he concluded. Bunkhouse is clean, cook serves 3 meals. "Kate can show you the horses." Ezra recognized the pattern, the father arranging for his daughter to have minimal contact with the male visitor. He accepted the terms with a nod, noting how Katherine's expression remained carefully neutral throughout the exchange. The horses proved to be quality stock, well-bred and intelligent. Ezra spent the day evaluating each one, establishing his presence among them, while periodically catching glimpses of Katherine going about her chores. Unlike many ranchers' daughters, she didn't restrict herself to household tasks. She worked alongside the ranch hands, riding out to check cattle, helping mend fences. Yet he noticed how the workers maintained a careful distance, polite but reserved. That evening, as twilight painted the mountains purple, Ezra sat on the bunkhouse steps, rolling a cigarette. The sound of approaching footsteps made him look up to find Katherine carrying a basket. "Father asked me to bring you these," she said, extending the basket. "Extra blankets, the nights are getting colder." "Thank you," he took the basket, noting the fine needlework on the quilt on top. "Did you make these?" She nodded. "During my exile, as I call it, my aunt believed idle hands were the devil's workshop. I became quite accomplished at womanly arts." The words carried a faint bitterness. Ezra gestured to the step beside him. "Would you care to sit, or would that cause more trouble for you?" Katherine hesitated, then sat, smoothing her skirts. "The hands have already decided I'm beyond redemption. One conversation won't change that." They sat in surprisingly comfortable silence for a moment, watching as stars appeared in the darkening sky. "Why horses?" she asked eventually. "They don't judge," he answered immediately, then felt foolish for revealing so much. But Katherine nodded seriously. "No, they don't. They see who you are in the moment, whether you're kind or cruel, confident or afraid. Yesterday doesn't matter to them." "Unlike people." "Unlike people," she agreed softly. After a pause, she added, "The stories they tell in town, they're not entirely true." Ezra turned to look at her profile, silvered in the emerging moonlight. "I don't listen much to town talk." "But you've heard them." It wasn't a question, he nodded. "Some." Katherine took a deep breath. "I was young and naive. Wendell Thompson paid attention to me when no one else did. He made me feel special, told me I was different from other girls, more mature." She twisted her hands in her lap. "By the time I realized he had said these things to girls before me, it was too late. The town had its villain, and it wasn't the respected businessman." Ezra felt anger stir on her behalf. "You were 17. Old enough to know better, according to most," she replied. "Young enough to believe in love, foolish enough to trust the wrong person." She stood abruptly. "I should return to the house. Father will wonder." "Was there a child?" The question escaped before Ezra could stop it. Katherine froze, her back to him. For a long moment she said nothing, and Ezra regretted his bluntness. "No," she finally said, so softly he barely heard. "There was not." Another disappointment among many. She walked away without looking back, her figure gradually dissolving into the darkness. Ezra cursed himself for his tactlessness. He had no right to pry into her past, no matter how the mystery of her pulled at him. He was a drifter, a man who avoided entanglements. In 2 weeks he would move on, and Katherine Patterson would become just another memory from another town. Yet that night, As he lay in his bunk listening to the wind across the prairie, it was her voice he heard, her steady blue gaze he remembered. For the first time in years, he found himself wanting to understand another person's story. The next days fell into a rhythm. Ezra worked with the horses from sunrise to sunset, establishing trust, beginning the gentle process of teaching them to accept a rider. Katherine continued her daily tasks, sometimes watching his work from a distance. Occasionally, they exchanged words about the horses, professional observations that gradually evolved into more personal conversations during chance encounters. A week into his stay, Ezra was working with a particularly stubborn bay gelding when a sudden thunderstorm rolled in from the mountains. Lightning cracked overhead, spooking the horse. It reared violently, catching Ezra off guard. He felt the lead rope burn through his palms before he lost his grip. Pain lanced through his shoulder as he hit the ground hard, rolling to avoid flailing hooves. Katherine appeared as if from nowhere, her voice steady as she approached the panicked horse. She caught the trailing rope and quickly secured the animal, then rushed to where Ezra was trying to sit up, his right arm hanging awkwardly. "Don't move," she ordered, kneeling beside him as rain began to pelt down. "Your shoulder's dislocated." Through the haze of pain, Ezra was impressed by her calm assessment. "You've seen this before." "My brother dislocated his shoulder twice before he left for California," she explained, helping him to his feet. "Can you walk to the house? You need to get out of this rain and I can't set it out here." The house was warm and smelled of baking bread. Katherine led him to the kitchen where she quickly cleared the large table. "Father's in town until tomorrow," she said, helping him remove his vest. "I'll need to cut your shirt. We can't move your arm to remove it properly." Ezra nodded, gritting his teeth against the pain. She worked efficiently, cutting away the fabric to expose his injured shoulder. If she noticed the old scars that marked his torso, remnants of a hard life, she made no comment. "This will hurt," she warned, positioning herself. "Ready." Before he could answer, she executed a swift, practiced movement. Ezra felt a sickening pop, followed by immediate relief as his shoulder slid back into its socket. He exhaled sharply, surprised by her strength and knowledge. "Where did you learn to do that?" he asked as she began binding his arm to immobilize it. "Books," she replied, not meeting his eyes. "I read everything I could find during my time away. Medicine, literature, history." She secured the bandage. "Knowledge seemed the one thing no one could take away from me." The intimacy of the moment, her hands on his bare skin, the empty house around them, the rain drumming on the roof, created a strange tension. Ezra was acutely aware of her closeness, the faint scent of lavender that clung to her hair. "Thank you," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "You should rest," she replied, stepping back. "You can use the guest room tonight. You're in no condition to walk back to the bunkhouse in this storm." Later, settled in a bedroom far more comfortable than his bunk, Ezra heard Katherine moving about the house. The domesticity of the sounds, dishes being washed, floorboards creaking, stirred a longing he'd thought long buried. This was what other men had: a home, a woman's presence, the simple comfort of being cared for. A soft knock preceded Katherine's entrance with a tray. "I brought you some dinner and willow bark tea for the pain." She set the tray beside him, then hesitated. "May I check your bandages?" Ezra nodded, watching as she leaned close, her fingers gently testing the bindings. Her face was inches from his, her expression concentrated. He could see a small scar near her temple, nearly hidden by her hairline. "How did you get that scar?" he asked quietly. Her fingers paused. "My father was not always a gentle man, especially when drinking. The night he discovered about Wendell and me, she trailed off, then straightened. "It was a long time ago." "Is that why you left?" "Your father's anger." Katherine moved to the window, looking out at the rain-soaked landscape. "I left because the town made it impossible to stay. Women crossed the street to avoid me. The minister suggested I not attend Sunday services. Wendell's wife came to our house, weeping and cursing me." Her voice grew distant. "My father arranged for me to stay with his sister in Boston. He said it was for my education, but we both knew it was exile. And now you're back, facing it all again." "Why?" She turned, moonlight from the window illuminating half her face while leaving the other in shadow. Because running away solved nothing, because this land is in my blood, because I refuse to let them win. Her voice softened. And because my father is dying, though few know it yet, lung sickness, the doctor gives him less than a year. The revelation hung between them, heavy with implications. Ezra understood suddenly why James Patterson had hired help with the horses. He was setting his affairs in order, ensuring his daughter would have a working ranch when he was gone. "I'm sorry," Ezra said simply. Katherine nodded, accepting his sympathy without comment. "You should eat before the food gets cold. I'll check on you in the morning." She left, closing the door quietly behind her, leaving Ezra with questions he had no right to ask and feelings he had no business harboring for a woman whose life was rooted in this place. Morning brought clearing skies and the return of James Patterson, who took one look at Ezra's bound arm and frowned. "Horse get the better of you, Blackett." "Yes, sir, won't happen again." The older man nodded. "Kate says you'll need a few days before you can work properly. Take the time. Contract pays for the job completed, not daily wages." Katherine moved around the kitchen, preparing breakfast, her manner more reserved with her father present. Ezra noted the way she anticipated the older man's needs, pouring his coffee before he asked, knowing exactly how he liked his eggs. "I'll head back to the bunkhouse," Ezra said after eating. "I can still work with the calmer horses one-handed." "Nonsense," James said gruffly. "You'll stay in the house until that shoulder's functional. Can't afford to have you injure it worse and be unable to finish the job." Ezra caught Katherine's surprised glance at her father. This arrangement clearly wasn't her idea. The next days created a strange domesticity. Ezra worked with the horses as much as his injury allowed and spent evenings in the Patterson home. Katherine gradually relaxed in his presence, revealing a quick mind and dry humor that surprised him. James often retired early, leaving them to talk by the fire. "Did you always want to work with horses?" she asked one evening as they sat in the parlor, she with her mending, he with a book she'd lent him. "Since I was a boy," Ezra replied. "My father had a farm in Nebraska, small place, but he kept good horses. He taught me everything I know about them." "What happened to the farm?" Ezra's hands tightened on the book. "Drought came. 3 years of bad harvests. Bank took it when I was 18. My father," he paused, the old pain surfacing. "He couldn't face starting over. Shot himself in the barn. My mother followed within the year. Grief, the doctor said." Katherine set aside her sewing, her face soft with compassion. "So you've been alone since then?" "By choice," he said firmly. "Putting down roots means giving others power to destroy what you build. Or it means building something strong enough to withstand storms," she countered. Their eyes met across the room, and Ezra felt something shift between them, a recognition of shared wounds, different but equally deep. The moment broke when James Patterson's coughing echoed from upstairs. Katherine rose immediately, concern etched on her features. "I need to check on him. Good night, Ezra." It was the first time she'd used his given name, and it lingered in the air after she'd gone. By the end of the week, Ezra's shoulder had improved enough for proper work. He moved back to the bunkhouse, but continued taking evening meals at the main house at James's insistence. The older man, between bouts of coughing, began including Ezra in discussions about the ranch's management. "Spring roundup will need extra hands," he said one evening. "Thinking of contracting with the Harper outfit from the next county." "Harper's charge too much," Ezra responded without thinking. "Bradley's crew from Sweetwater would be cheaper and just as good." James studied him thoughtfully. "You know the outfits around here well for a drifter." Ezra shrugged. "I pay attention. It's how I find work." "Ever consider stopping the drift, settling somewhere?" The question caught Ezra off guard. He glanced at Katherine, who was studiously focused on her plate. "Never found a reason to," he answered carefully. James nodded slowly. "Reasons have a way of finding you when you least expect them." He pushed back from the table. "I need to rest. Kate, show Blackett the ledgers. Might as well get his opinion on the breeding program while he's here." After her father retired, Katherine led Ezra to the small study off the main room. "He doesn't usually take to people so quickly," she said, unlocking a desk drawer to remove leather-bound account books. "He must see something in you." "Or he's desperate for help with the ranch," Ezra replied, uncomfortable with the implication. Katherine's smile held sadness. "That too, he's trying to ensure I'll be able to manage when—" She didn't finish the sentence. "Here are the breeding records. Father's been crossing our quarter horses with thoroughbred lines for speed." Ezra accepted the ledger, but his mind was elsewhere. "Katherine, what happens to you when your father passes? This is a big operation for a woman alone." "You sound like the banker," she said, a defensive edge entering her voice. "I've been running most of this ranch since I returned. Father taught me everything he knows." "I didn't mean you weren't capable," he clarified quickly. "But this territory isn't kind to lone women, regardless of capability." "You think I don't know that?" She closed the ledger abruptly. "Every option has been made clear to me. Sell the ranch and leave with whatever money I can get. Marry quickly for protection, even if it means someone who only wants the land. Or struggle to hold on alone, fighting not just the elements but every man who thinks he can take what belongs to me." Her blue eyes flashed. "I choose the third option." Ezra recognized the determination in her stance. It mirrored his own stubborn independence. "I admire your resolve," he said softly. "I just worry about the cost. The cost of staying true to myself. It's one I've paid before." She moved toward the window, looking out at the darkness. "When I was 17, I thought love would save me from loneliness. I was wrong in every possible way. Now I know better. The only person I can truly depend on is myself." The parallel to his own beliefs was striking. Ezra stood, moving to stand beside her at the window. "We're more alike than different, Katherine Patterson." She turned to face him, close enough that he could see the faint freckles across her nose, smell the lavender in her hair. "Are we?" "You choose to keep moving. I choose to stand my ground." "Both choices born of the same fear," he said, surprising himself with the insight. "Fear that staying will hurt more than leaving. Fear that trusting will end in betrayal." Katherine's eyes widened slightly. "Perhaps you're right," she whispered. For a heartbeat, Ezra thought she might reach for him, but she stepped back instead. "It's getting late. You should return to the bunkhouse." As October gave way to November, Ezra completed work with the horses ahead of schedule. The evening before he planned to leave, James Patterson called him into his study after dinner. "You've done good work, Blackett," the older man said, handing him payment, a sum notably larger than their agreed price. "This is too much," Ezra protested. James waved away his objection. "Consider it a bonus for the shoulder injury." He coughed, the sound rattling deep in his chest. "I have a proposition for you." "Sir?" "Winter's coming. Patterson Ranch needs a foreman who knows horses. Position's yours if you want it. Room and board plus wages." The offer took Ezra completely by surprise. "Why me? You barely know me." "Know enough," James said simply. "You're honest, work hard, respect the land." He paused. "And my daughter trusts you." "That's rare these days." The mention of Katherine made Ezra's chest tighten. He'd been fighting his growing feelings for her, reminding himself daily that attachment led to pain. Yet the thought of riding away tomorrow left him hollow. "I'm not a settling man, Mr. Patterson." "Everyone's a drifter until they find a reason not to be," the older man replied. "Think on it overnight. Let me know in the morning." Ezra walked back to the bunkhouse through the cold night air, his mind in turmoil. The job was a good one, better than good. The Patterson Ranch was prosperous, the work suited to his skills. But staying meant putting down roots, something he'd avoided for 7 years. It also meant remaining close to Katherine, watching her struggle against the town's judgment, witnessing her fight to maintain the ranch after her father's passing. The thought of her facing that battle alone twisted something in his chest. He was still awake when a knock came at the bunkhouse door near midnight. Katherine stood on the threshold, wrapped in a heavy shawl, her face pale in the moonlight. "Father told me about his offer," she said without preamble. "Katherine, you shouldn't be out here alone at night. I needed to speak with you." She stepped inside, closing the door against the cold. "You're leaving tomorrow." It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. "I was planning to." "And now?" Ezra ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know, your father's offer is generous. But accepting it would mean staying." She studied his face. "Something you don't do." "Something I haven't done," he corrected. "There's a difference." Katherine moved closer, her eyes searching his. "Why have you stayed this long already? 3 weeks for 2 weeks' work." The question hung between them, demanding truth. Ezra found he couldn't lie to her. "Because of you," he said simply. "Because every day I find another reason to stay one more day." Her breath caught audibly. "Ezra." "I know it's foolish," he continued, the words tumbling out now. "You have your life here, your ranch. I'm a drifter with nothing to offer but trouble. The town already judges you, being associated with me won't help that. Do you think I care what they think anymore?" Her voice was fierce. "They decided who I was 5 years ago. Their opinion means nothing to me now." "It should," he insisted. "You have to live here after I'm gone." Katherine stepped even closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her. "Is that what you want, to be gone?" The question struck at the heart of his conflict. For the first time in years, the thought of moving on brought no relief, only emptiness. "No," he admitted, "that's not what I want." Katherine's hand rose to touch his cheek, her fingers gentle against his skin. "Then stay. Not for my father, not for the ranch, stay for me." The world narrowed to her face, her eyes, the small space between them. Ezra knew he stood at a crossroads, the safe path of continued drifting or the dangerous, unknown territory of putting down roots, of risking his heart. "Katherine," he whispered, his hand covering hers, "I'm afraid of what staying might mean." "So am I," she confessed, "but I'm more afraid of watching you ride away." The truth of her words broke something loose inside him. Ezra closed the distance between them, his lips finding hers in a kiss that began tentatively but quickly deepened with shared longing. Katherine's arms wound around his neck as she pressed closer, returning his passion with her own. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Ezra rested his forehead against hers. "If I stay," he said softly, "I stay for good, no more drifting." Her smile illuminated her entire face. "Is that a promise, Ezra Blackett?" "Yes, Katherine Patterson, that's a promise." Morning brought a new understanding between them. Ezra accepted James Patterson's offer, moving his few possessions to the small cabin near the main house that came with the foreman position. He threw himself into learning every aspect of the ranch's operation, working closely with James to understand the older man's vision for the property. News of his permanent position and his growing closeness to Katherine spread quickly through the community. Reactions were predictably mixed. Some ranch hands quit rather than work under a foreman romantically involved with that Patterson girl. Others, who had come to respect Ezra's skill with horses and fair management style, remained loyal. The first time Ezra accompanied Katherine to town, whispers followed them down the street. He walked tall beside her, his hand at the small of her back, his eyes challenging anyone who dared to openly disrespect her. The general store owner, Calhoun, made a point of serving other customers first, making them wait nearly an hour. When he finally acknowledged them, his manner was coldly professional. "Surprised to see you still here, Blackett," he commented as he measured out flour. "Thought you were passing through." "Found a reason to stay," Ezra replied evenly, his hand finding Katherine's. Calhoun's eyebrows rose at their linked hands. "Well, I suppose that explains it. Birds of a feather and all that." Ezra felt Katherine tense beside him. "Mr. Calhoun," he said, his voice dangerously soft, "I'd appreciate you showing Miss Patterson the respect she deserves." "Respect is earned in this town," the storekeeper replied. "As is business," Ezra countered. "The Patterson Ranch spends a considerable sum in your establishment each month. I'd hate to have to take that business to Sweetwater." The threat of lost revenue made Calhoun reassess his position. His manner didn't warm, but the open hostility faded to grudging civility. As winter settled over the land, bringing snow and bitter cold, the Patterson household developed a comfortable routine. James's health deteriorated with each passing week, leaving more responsibility on Ezra's and Katherine's shoulders. They worked side by side during the day and spent evenings planning for spring, their heads bent together over ledgers and breeding charts. Christmas came with a heavy snowfall that isolated the ranch for days. Katherine decorated the house with pine boughs and red ribbons, determined to make the holiday special despite her father's declining health. On Christmas Eve, as James dozed by the fire, Ezra presented Katherine with a small wooden box. "It isn't much," he said as she opened it to reveal a delicate silver locket. Katherine touched it reverently. "It's beautiful." "Open it," he urged. Inside was a tiny pressed flower, a prairie rose, preserved from their first kiss. Katherine's eyes filled with tears as she looked up at him. "I love you," she said simply, the first time either had spoken the words aloud. Ezra took her hands in his. "Katherine Patterson, I never believed I would find a home again after losing my family. I never thought I'd trust enough to love someone. You've proven me wrong on both counts." He knelt before her. "I can't offer you wealth or social standing. All I have is my heart in my hands. But if you'll have me, I want to build a life with you here." "Are you asking me to marry you, Ezra Blackett?" she whispered. "Yes," he answered, "though I know it might make things harder for you in town." Katherine laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Do you think I care about that? Yes, Ezra, yes, I will marry you." From his armchair, James Patterson cleared his throat. "About time," he said, his eyes twinkling despite his pallor. "Was beginning to think I'd have to suggest it myself." The wedding took place in February, a small affair at the ranch house with only a handful of guests. The loyal ranch hands, the minister from Sweetwater who agreed to perform the ceremony, and a few neighboring ranchers who had maintained cordial relations with the Pattersons despite the town's ostracism. James insisted on walking his daughter down the stairs, though he needed Ezra's support to stand through the ceremony. His gift to them was the deed to the ranch, transferred into both their names. "Always meant for Kate to have it," he explained afterward. "Feel better knowing you're beside her." Spring came early that year, bringing green to the hills and new life to the pastures. James Patterson passed peacefully in his sleep in late March, having lived long enough to see the first foals of the season and the certainty of his daughter's happiness. The town's attitude began to shift gradually after James's funeral. Katherine's dignified grief and Ezra's steady presence beside her earned reluctant respect. Their successful management of the ranch, which continued to provide employment and business to Riverstone, made it difficult for even the most judgmental to maintain their hostility. By summer, the whispers had largely faded. When Dr. Miller confirmed Katherine's pregnancy in July, the news was met with the customary congratulations rather than renewed scandal. "It's strange," Katherine remarked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching thunderheads build over the distant mountains. Her hand rested on her still flat stomach. "5 years ago, this town drove me away in shame. Now they bring casseroles and baby blankets." Ezra pulled her closer against his side. "People have short memories when it's convenient." "Not all memories should be short," she said thoughtfully. "Some need to be preserved, even the painful ones." She looked up at him. "Do you ever regret staying, giving up your freedom to drift?" Ezra considered the question seriously. "I thought drifting was freedom," he finally said. "I was wrong. It was just another kind of prison, always moving, never belonging." He placed his hand over hers on her stomach. "This is freedom, building something that matters, loving someone who sees all of you and loves you anyway." Katherine leaned her head against his shoulder. Who would have thought the town Outcast and the drifting horse Wrangler would find their answer in each other? "I think we both needed someone who understood what it meant to be judged," Ezra replied. "Someone who knew the cost of standing alone." As twilight deepened into night, they remained on the porch, speaking of the future, the child coming in winter, the spring breeding program, the new line of horses they were developing. Their plans stretched years ahead, rooted in the land they both now called home. The horse Wrangler who couldn't stay and the woman no one wanted had found in each other the courage to build a life neither had believed possible. Their shared understanding of loss made the foundation of their love unshakable, their combined strength transforming judgment into respect, isolation into belonging. The love between Ezra Blackett and Katherine Patterson had not only shaped their future but redefined it entirely, proving that even on the harsh frontier, hearts could find their way home.